Yeah, times of crisis around the world is what we're seeing, that every country on the globe is in a position they never expected to be in when, the world crossed over into 2020 a few months ago. There had been talk of, COVID, for example, in countries in the Eastern Hemisphere. So China was already suffering from this. They had already talked about this. But most countries did not expect that they would be at a place where they are currently. And you find that in order to get yourself out of it, or at least to be able to manage it in a way that you seem as if you have both feet on the ground, leaders then would need to step up to make sure that people are, number one, well taken care of, that they're protected, and that policies for government are put in place that then would make sure that whatever then you came up with thereafter would be closely adhered to. Several agencies, departments that needed to fall in line to make sure that this work was being done is actually done. You would say that there is a crisis in every country in the world now, thanks to the pandemic. Previously, you could say that there were crises in many countries when it came to economic issues. But from one time to the next, any administration, any political leadership is going to find themselves in a position of crisis. Now, the question is, or the issues that we find ourselves facing at this time is, can you rely on your leaders in a position or in a time of crisis? What more would you need to call on your leaders for when it came to these? Would you say that you need to be more innovative? Would it mean that you needed to be more creative? Would it mean that you needed to put more opinions in the pot to make sure that people are being taken care of? I think there's a lot then that is called upon leaders to do when these times come about. How then do we handle it? What do you demand of your leaders? What do they feel the responsibility is when it comes to times like these? There's been a lot of hue and cry that, in handling things, let's say when it has come to just COVID, that leaders have not handled this in the manner in which they should. So do leaders need to go on a crash course, for example? Do they need to pull out something out of the hat? Like
do they need a webinar?
Something extra? Do they need a Zoom meeting? Does something need to be done when it comes to times of crisis? Or is it something that they should always have on the back burner that they can pull out from when a time like this comes?
One would expect, though, that as a leader, you should be prepared for good times and bad times.
Absolutely, that's the thing.
You should be ready to make tough decisions, especially during the bad times. That's why the tough decisions really bite or really have an impact, right? Because you are going through turbulent times, and that everybody has their attention focused on you. And whatever decision you're making at that point is really, really having an impact.
What are the ingredients of a tough decision? What makes a decision tough?
Well, when the impact on some people is going to be uncomfortable, I would say that's a tough decision. Whereby something has to suffer in this decision that you're making, it's difficult. You would like it to be easy, where that across board everything is comfortable. But when it becomes tough, means that one side is going to suffer more than you would like it to.
And in some cases, you may find that the majority would suffer. It's not going to be the most popular decision that you make. Popular decisions is because, well, everybody's like, we like that.
This one.
That's a good one.
An example of popular decision is let's open up the economy. And let's shut the economy
Let's
down.
shut the economy.
That's the difficult one.
Yeah.
Because it's not popular.
It's not popular.
But is it effective? Is it useful? Is it needed?
Depending again on what your outcome is, like I keep saying, if your intention is, for example, to stop the spread of corona.
Or to win a popularity contest.
Yeah.
There you go. If that is your intention, and say, look what we did. We shut down the economy and people did not die. Then it becomes very difficult, because then what are you doing? People's livelihoods out the window. People's ability to earn out the window. So it's tough, but guess what? People are not getting sick and dying.
Other tough decisions. You look at your budget, you look at how much you're able to raise, and then you decide, you know what, a lot of this money is going into paying salaries, and you decide that you've got to cut back on salaries, or you're going to reduce the size of your what is called a bloated workworkforce. That's a tough decision.
You're going to look at the development projects that you have.
Yep.
And you're going to ask yourself the question, do we need these things now? We need it, but do we need it now? And then what must we do? Can we then redistribute this money to cope with this danger that we now face and which threatens all of us?
Yes.
Tough decision.
Or you as a leader look at this, you look at the leaders under you who are, for example, making crazy trips around the globe for benchmarking and other things. And you say, you know what, as it is, our economy is already suffering. We need some extra money here or there to make things work. No more traveling. And it could hurt you in the future, because then somebody could rally around and say, this individual, we're not putting them back in because look at the way in which they cut our wings. Tough decision.
The government has given you money to ensure that you are prepared to deal with any COVID occurrence that may be in your county. And you can't really easily explain what that money has done or where it has gone to. Tough decision. You ensure that the law is followed to the letter in ensuring that if there was any malpractice, if there was anything that didn't meet the close scrutiny that such matters must be given, then the law must take its course. Irrespective of your position, irrespective of your place, irrespective of your title, or your connections or your political party.
Or how I may like or not like you.
Yes.
Or just looking and seeing that you've become completely unpopular because of the stupid decisions that you've made in the past. And you make the tough decision to quit.
Yes.
Leave office. Step down. Tough decision. Innovative leadership in times of crisis. Let's speak to somebody who is an expert in this, Executive Director of the Global Peace Foundation, Kenya. Daniel Juma Omondi joins us on the line. Good morning, Daniel.
Good morning, Eric.
Welcome
And
to the
everyone
Situation Room.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Everyone
This
else.
morning.
Everyone else
Everyone
greets
else
you.
greets you too. Good morning.
Good morning, Oko. Good morning, Muga.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm happy to be with you here this morning. This is my first time in your show.
And we welcome you.
It's very refreshing. Yeah, asante sana. Thank you.
Karibu. Daniel, you've had our introduction to this. The topic is innovative leadership in times of crisis. We are in a crisis. There's a global pandemic. So the entire world is in a crisis. And we're looking at leaders, and people have just been even comparing and saying, oh, look at the countries that have handled this crisis so well. And look at the kind of leader that they have. Look at the gender of their leader. All these conversations are happening, at whatever forums in our community. What is it that you would define as innovative leadership in such a time?
Thank you, Eric. The real test of leadership does not occur when everything is smooth sailing. True leadership, is tested during a crisis. And the way a leader behaves and acts during crisis will establish their credentials as a good leader or a poor one. And as you see around the globe right now, we are presented with a crisis. And you can see, especially the countries such as New Zealand, Germany, Finland, you can see that when these crises occurred, they took steps, immediately to be able to manage it. And most of these crises, even in Taiwan, I think they were able to actually implement, measures to ensure that the coronavirus was controlled. But look at other countries, for example. I'll just give you examples. For example, Brazil. Look at what's going on there. I think now the second largest, I think the third, biggest casualty. And also, not far away, you can see what's going on in the U.S. And right now, the campaigns in the U.S. is about coronavirus. President Trump is actually running against the coronavirus. That is his biggest opponent. And you can see also locally, and I said it one day, that when these crises happen, when we started hearing about the Wuhan virus, you could see that our own local leadership, did not wake up immediately. I think it took a headline, from the Standard, to really wake them up. Could see we're still flying to China, Wuhan, and then one CS was saying that they will not stop flying to China, and eventually they stopped flying to China and to every other places. So innovative leadership is a leadership, that applies creativity, that applies innovation to find solutions for your people. When you have been given the mantle of leadership, it is your responsibility to lead. If you are a teacher, you have to lead in your classroom. If you are a politician, you have to lead in government. If you are a minister, it is your responsibility, to provide leadership. If you are the president, whatever happens, if your nation is attacked, that is your responsibility. The buck stops with you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that is my take on that.
What is your outlook on, let's take Kenya as an example, since we're here now? Do you think leadership so far on this, just COVID, let's not talk about things that were happening before in terms of the economy and such. Let's take COVID as an example, since it's right front and center. How would you feel in terms of innovative leadership that the leadership that we currently have has performed?
On this, it is very. I think there are individuals in leadership that have actually tried to do their best. For example, when it comes to COVID, we have seen, of course, the president leading from the front, and also CS Mutahi Kagwe has been, on the front, giving what I can call mentorship every day, to the people. I've been listening to his speeches and presentation, just telling, urging people to stay at home, urging people to, to eat well. And, his speeches have been actually mentorship, sessions for very many other people. But of course, we have seen also other people, other leaders, and you could see when you heard the president's speech the other day, he castigated some leaders who are not showing a good example. For example, an open example is Senator Sakaja, who is the chairman of a COVID Senate committee, and he is responsible for making the rules that we are all following as the people. But you could see that he does not believe in the rules that he is himself involved in making, and then it's kind of like preaching wine and drinking water. And of course, give it to him. He recognized that, and he apologized, and he was able to resign from that position. So, what is lacking in Africa and Kenya, and of course, is that leaders do not take responsibility. But if you look at
excuse me, sir,
Korea,
when you say they don't take responsibility, what do you mean?
I mean, they make laws, and then they think the laws are for the people, for the small man in the street. And they don't think that the law applies to them. You can see when you're driving to town, most of the time, a GK, the powerful minister is overlapping, and the common man is expected to actually be the one to obey that law. Yep. So that is how we are supposed to start. A leader should lead by example, not by what you say. I need to see you, in the process of leading. If I don't see you obeying your own laws and regulations, then you have no responsibility, you have no moral authority to actually be in leadership. I'll give an example of Korea. I've stayed in Korea, and I've seen in Korea, if, for example, a leader is not just suspected, or the media is talking that a leader, is corrupt, or just
which Korea are you speaking about, North or South?
I'm talking about South Korea. North Korea. Yes. Now, just the fact that people are talking about it, you find, a minister will resign from that position, and because he does not want to bring that position to disrepute. But that does not happen in Kenya. Here in Kenya or in Africa, someone is accused, taken to court, charged, and he says, I will not resign. It's a big, big problem. So there is no moral and innovative leadership locally. And you can count a few, that are trying to lead from the front, that are trying to provide a good example. And that is what we need. Mostly, leaders need to, they need to show a good example. For example, the political meetings that are ongoing. You can see, Western leaders have been chased around by police, yet they know they should be keeping distance. They should be staying at home, and they have been running battles with the police, and they know this is not something they should be doing. So when they're doing that, what do you expect the common man in the village to do?
Well, Daniel, there are very many who argue that when you talk about this leadership and the kind of yardstick that we use to judge our leaders, that they say you should look at the context. Don't look at South Korea, for example, and their context and impose it on a Kenyan context, which may be different in terms of the expectation of the population, the people that you're leading, and also the standards that have been set by the people themselves of their leaders. So, for instance, I've just heard you say that, looking at the CS for Health, Mutahi Kagwe, the president himself, and how they've been talking and appearing to lead the fight against COVID-19, and you're already ticking boxes and saying, all right, look, because of how they speak, we can see leadership.
Yeah, I just gave you an example that I think first, when you speak it, we can see their intention. I'm not saying they're 100% correct. There are still questions that, of course, the leadership will have to answer. For example, how are they spending the money that is meant for COVID? There should be absolute transparency in the way the money is being expended, and I think Parliament, the responsibility of Parliament, to be able to interrogate government expenditure. I think the parliamentary committee, will have to, of course, ask these hard questions. So I don't want to cast aspersions right now on that, because that has been the biggest question coming, from the people. But what I meant is that it is the responsibility of the president to speak, to say the right words. We need to hear the right words from him. And as he says the right words, we need also to see him doing those things. And that's why I was happy when he himself was castigating, his senator, and you could hear people saying that one of the reasons that alcohol sale has been banned was because of that particular incident.
But Mr. Juma, the same president then proceeded to praise the governors. What on earth was he praising the governors for, when they have not been able to account for the monies that they've been given specifically for COVID? They themselves have presented statistics that are false by telling us that only 21 counties were not ready yet, when an inspectorate or inspection process that was actually occasioned by the president himself turned out that only 5 counties were actually prepared. So, and here he was patting them on the back. What was he patting them on the back for?
I personally have been disappointed by the way most of our governors have expended, have utilized this money, for COVID. In his previous speeches, he picked out a few governors, governors of Busia, Siaya, where I come from. These counties they haven't done a good job, and health was devolved, and if you see the health situation in most of these counties, they're in a sorry state. So I think COVID gives them an opportunity to be able to correct, the health infrastructure in those counties. But they have not done that. So, I don't know, maybe it could be political correctness or what, but I would not agree that the governors, personally I would not agree that the governors have done a good job. But the president has a right to his opinion on that, but I disagree with him on that.
Do you think these governors actually have the ability to do what is right?
The governors have the moral, responsibility to do what is right. People expect them to do what is right. It is very sad that almost 7 years after devolution, and especially when health was devolved, that we are still talking about the basic health infrastructure. Some hospitals, if you go, you'll not even find, basic, for example, we are talking about COVID, but you will not find adequate PPEs. I had complaints, for example, in other places, that even the nurses, the doctors don't even have PPEs. Some, they are reusing, for example, face masks. Not even the N95 face mask. Some are using the cloth face mask. Huh? Yep. They don't have access to that. So, if you go to the counties and inspect what is going on, and even talk to the people, or even the health practitioners, you will find that there's a big problem. They don't have adequate PPEs, and I am sure that the people have been saying that the people have a responsibility to speak out, and name and shame those governors that are not utilizing the funds that are given to them, in a proper manner.
Okay, so in this case, where we see all of these things seeming to be going wrong, an innovative leader who was thinking about pushing the country in the right direction, what would you suggest they do at this point?
At this point, and for me, if I was in position of leadership immediately, when the coronavirus was announced, I would have basically listened to science, relied on what the scientists are saying, and number one would have been to completely, seal off our borders, cancel flights from the countries that were affected. That was the first thing that I would have done, and number two was to ensure that you have the basic, the required, protective equipment to be able to manage, especially to protect the health practitioners. And number three, in Kenya, and in Africa, our social welfare system is still very, very poor. If you go to the U.S. now, my brother, lives abroad in Canada, and when this came up and they were asked to stay at home, they receive government stipend, which is even $500 per week. But I realize that, we are not able to do that. We cannot. We are not able to implement full lockdown because we cannot afford to feed our people.
Really?
Even basic feeding our people. I mean that is the reality.
Or is that the message that's being put out there? A message versus the real ability to do, because those are two totally different things.
I think this is where now we've gone right into what we are discussing, because this is where innovation, in terms of innovative leadership in such a time of crisis, comes in. You have a population that would require social protection. You are looking at yourself, you're saying maybe you have budgetary constraints, you have an economy that is not as strong as others that you're talking about. So what is it that a leader should do during such a time? Daniel Juma Omondi is the Executive Director of the Global Peace Foundation. We are speaking with him this hour. We are looking at that, innovative leadership in terms of crisis, taking this particular crisis that we are dealing with now and looking at what is it that you would expect an innovative leader to do. What kind of ideas would you expect to come out through innovative leadership? There are very many things that have been done that maybe you can tick the boxes and say this was innovative, and then there are others maybe that we could point out and say an idea like this could have been explored further. For instance, 26 minutes after 7 is the Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation, broadcasting on Spice FM, Nairobi, Mombasa, Kisumu, Nakuru, Eldoret, Nyeri and Malindi, and also on KTN Home. Making decisions during the tough times shows the kind of mettle that you have as a leader. In a time like this, when you have COVID-19, it's the kind of decision that you make, and also when you make that decision, and the kind of action that follows the decisions that you've made, and ensuring that the decision that you've made has been implemented as well to the ground. That all brings in the innovative leadership. As we went into the break, Daniel, you talked about, you gave the example, for example, of your brother who's in Canada, and they were told, stay indoors, there's a lockdown, and then the government was able to roll out a social protection program immediately, where they're receiving up to $500
$500
a week. And then you said, maybe this was not possible for Kenya. And CT Muga was like, really? Now pick it up from there.
Thank you, Eric. One of the things that even not just Canada, but also US, Europe, they have a strong, social protection system, and that has come in handy to be able to assist the government to implement either total or partial lockdown. This is lacking in Africa, and this is one of the reasons why, for example, Kenya, we're not able to do a total lockdown, because if you do that, what's going to happen to the population? You have to get them food, and you could see what was happening. Politicians actually took advantage.
Mr. Omondi, why do you think we cannot have a total lockdown?
It has actually happened in Africa.
I'm just telling you. It's not. It happened maybe in South Africa,
yeah,
and maybe
in
kind of in Uganda,
in Rwanda.
Yes, but
So are we saying
somehow,
that we are poorer than Rwanda and or Uganda?
I think we are rich. We are very rich. But that is a question, that I think the Treasury has to answer. I'm not able to answer that. I think it required leadership, in terms of government, to come up with a system. And I saw in Mombasa, Joho tried in the beginning. Governor Joho, he tried to demonstrate that he was capable of feeding the people of Mombasa, but that was not replicated in other counties. But again, if you go into Mombasa, some people were saying that was just politics, but in real sense, that whatever he was trying to do was not reaching the people. What I'm saying is that I think if you look at the country, for example, we have a system which the government has tried to implement. Pesa kwa wazee, where they've been sending a little bit of money to selected old people in the
called
villages,
Inua Jamii.
Inua Jamii.
Yes.
Yeah, so that is the semblance of the social protection system we want. But I remember one day I was in the Senate where Senator Naomi Wako presented a bill in Parliament on how to be able to control the problem of terrorism. And then in my presentation I said that one of the most important things that we need to do, if even to demonstrate our capability of social protection, I said that we must ensure that, number one, there is no street children in Nairobi and all over in our urban areas. That the government should at least be able to provide homes and be able to ensure that these street children are taken care of. Because these are the people who will be available for misuse and for recruitment by extremists. I remember saying that, and I said that the government needs to invest in the future. So if we are able to take care of these young people in the streets, give them education, and then empower them with entrepreneurship, with skills, then they will be able to become productive citizens. They'll be able to become economic citizens who pay taxes to the people. But when we only focus on giving money to the old people who will not be productive after that, and leaving out these young people who are the future of the nation, then I thought that was misplaced. I said that I recommended that a law should be passed, to ensure that everybody is accountable for his children. Like Eric, if you have 2 or 3 children, you need to account. Say that I am Eric Latif. I have 3 children. I'm living with 3 now. I have maybe several out of wedlock, so that you are able to take care of all your children. So if every person can account for their kids, for their children, then we are able to control the issue.
So you say you presented this before Senate?
Yes, I presented this before Senate.
What reaction did you receive when you came up with such a preposterous thought?
I remember some of the senators. Senator Wetangula was in that committee, and it was very controversial. It was not well received at that time.
And what was the feedback? I mean, what were the senators telling you?
Yeah, the senator was basically, most senators want to be politically correct. Some basically are very, very careful, that they are not able to come up with laws that will basically, and some of them, I'm not saying the Senate, but, everyone is a culprit here. We have many, many Kenyan leaders, Kenyan politicians, Kenyans who are basically deadbeat. They don't know where their kids are. And, it saddens me when I walk in Nairobi and I see street children. And these children have mothers, they have uncles, they have relatives.
Some of them are on the streets with their mothers.
Yes, and if I go to the rural area, why don't I see street kids for example, in my village in Uganda? Because we have an extended family model, where even if someone's father died, the relatives will take care of them.
Yeah.
I went to Zanzibar. We have also that kind of system. You'll not find sick kids in Zanzibar. They have an extended family model. But here we have, people do not want to take care of their kids. Some of these kids have their mothers and relatives. Why can't they take care of these children? These are the future of the nation. I've always said that a big population, the youth bulk, should never be considered. It's an asset. It should never be considered a burden. Africa has the youngest population of young people. And this should be an asset that we can nurture to develop our economies. If we had a population, other countries have a population of old people who are not able to actually contribute to the economy. So our young population is an asset that leadership can use innovatively to be able to develop this nation.
You stood for public office at some point. Let's say that you were at the table now and we are looking at, an area over which you had then, authoritative jurisdiction. What would you do to innovate, to create, to bring in things on the table to make the livelihoods of people better, for example, with what we are facing with COVID-19? What specifically would you do that would show that you were forward-thinking as a leader?
When I ran for Member of Parliament in Uganda in last year's by-election, my manifesto, and you can see my manifesto, is published in my website, danieljuma.com. I basically, and one of the things that I wanted to do, and one of the failures of our leadership today, is that they have something called legislative oversight. That you can apply legislative oversight to solve some of the problems of our people. For example, and it has been done before, you could see, when sexual offenses was a big issue in this nation, Njokin Dungu, when she was nominated Member of Parliament, basically came up with a sexual offences bill that was able to revolutionize how we address the issue of sexual offences. Why is it that our members of Parliament are not able to legislate? We pay the money. They have a budget for research. Why can't they use research to come up with legislative solutions which would then force the executive to be able to implement some of these issues? Like, for example, having a proper, well-organized social welfare system can be legislated. But our members of Parliament are not doing that. Our members of Parliament are busy managing CDF. CDF should have been moved to the executive. The role of Member of Parliament is legislative and oversight.
So when you say the executive, which executive should CDF be moved to?
The
county government?
Of course, the executive, of course, national government and the county government, I'm sorry to say.
But the county governments that we have in this country haven't really demonstrated, or they haven't shown a very, very good record of managing the monies that they are given.
Come on, CT. Beef. Really?
No. If I'm to go by what we've seen with the COVID money, there is very little that shows me that they have managed the monies that they've been given for COVID well.
This is picking one issue and just making it like, the representative of everything.
Yes, actually, I am.
So which government, both county and...
I'm talking about county governments.
Which government, both county and
national government,
has demonstrated capacity to
the national
manage
government
money well?
Had capacity to have the money to give to the county government. The county governments have not shown capacity for utilizing this money. I'm specifically talking about COVID money well.
But what I'm saying is that the legislatures, the MCAs and the members of Parliament, their role is to oversight the executive. And one of the failings of our system today is that MCAs think that they're employed by the governors. When governors give them money to run around, go for benchmarking, then you will not hear impeachments in those county governments. But when the governor is not able to give them allowances to go to benchmarking, then you hear this impeachment. What you saw in Kirinyaga County, could have been replicated. There are more sins that have been done in other counties. that are worse, but it's just that the MCAs are in bed with governors. They are not performing their legislative and oversight functions.
Why?
Our constitution, envisaged, because the kind of system we have today requires that it is the role, the body that should play opposition and oversight is the legislature. Parliament is in a position to actually, play oversight. For example, with COVID and all this, Parliament, have a right. And whether you're in position of government, as long as you're in Parliament, you are there on behalf of the people. And I've always said that leadership is about the people. That when you're in Parliament, you are there on behalf of the people. You should ask these hard questions on behalf of the people. The members of Parliament should be asking, why are we not able to afford money to feed the people during a lockdown? But the members of Parliament are not asking these questions. And that is why I ran for Parliament. Those are the kind of things that I hope I would be able to.
Probably they ask the questions, Daniel, and then they also get the answers and they get the responses. They're alive to the realities of the day. Remember, our Parliament is also a budget-making Parliament. So they are aware of the capacity of government to roll out such programs. They are aware of the capacity of government at present, for example, to address the COVID-19 pandemic.
And the fact that they're in charge of the budget-making process is the more reason why, they are in a better position to actually allocate money, to address the kind of issues that we're talking about. A social, even a semblance of a social welfare system, should have been demonstrated during the COVID era, that this was the time for the government to prove that they are in a position to feed their people in times of a crisis. This was the time that they were able to demonstrate that. And just like you said, Rwanda, doing that, and also Uganda. But you could see that happening in Europe. Without a total lockdown, it is not easy to contain the coronavirus pandemic. And that is the kind of leadership I think we need, especially in times of a pandemic like we have today.
Daniel, do you think it's possible to have forced, innovative or creative leadership?
Absolutely, it is possible. And that's why countries like Singapore, and it takes a leader to inspire a nation. And an innovative leadership, an innovative leader should inspire their citizens, to innovate, to even to obey the rule of law.
I understand. What I'm saying, Daniel, is forced innovative leadership. So you see, for example, that things have gone to the dogs in the country and the citizens are not getting what it is that they should. Because if you're talking about leadership then being for the people, it's not happening, right? So who then takes responsibility when it's not happening? Because if a leader is not being transformational, if a leader is not being reformist, for example, the people continue to suffer. Who puts that leader to account?
The people, it's the responsibility of the people who elect that leadership to make that leadership account. I'll give you an example. Right now in the United States of America, you could see originally President Trump did not take the issue of coronavirus seriously. At some point, he stopped even having coronavirus sessions. But when the numbers kept going up, the other day he had to come out in the open and say that he supports the usage of masks. At some point, usage of masks in the U.S. was a political issue. And it became, it was a divisive issue. And at the end of the day, when his poll numbers were going, were going down, he had to come and actually be able to acknowledge, the use of masks and to start taking the coronavirus seriously. So I think it is the people and the instrument, just like we have, and the media here is very, very critical. The role of the media. I think most of the time the media plays opposition. It is you, the media, who should always provide a wake-up call to the leadership by articulating these issues. Some of the people in the rural areas, for example, where I come from, in Uganda, you find that illiteracy levels are so high. So leaders, especially crooked leaders, take advantage of the illiteracy of the people. For example, to misuse the CDF money, the money for the CDF, I can tell you for free, almost 30% of the CDF is basically stolen by members of parliament through proxies. This is an open secret. But who is doing something about it? And that's one of the reasons why the members of parliament, fought the decision to the court issue. I think it was taken to court by Omtata, where they wanted to prevent the members of parliament from controlling the CDF. But then they went around and
Wanjiru Gekonyo, who's one of our co-hosts.
Wanjiru Gekonyo, yeah. Yes,
but
that was a very good case.
This brings the issue back to what I was saying, Daniel, earlier. It's the context. In the Kenyan context, and I also piggybacks on what Ndu is asking, forced innovation in leadership. If the people that you're leading are not woke, so to speak, or even alert to what they expect of you as a leader, then whatever you do, you may think that this is innovative. It's like saying that we shall expect to have an innovative leader just falling from the sky and not in the context of the fact that this person is coming from our community. This is who we are as a people. This is how we are handling COVID-19 as a people. So our leaders are basically leading us the way we are.
If you do not ask questions as a people, for example, you are in a constituency and you are not asking questions. You're not asking how much money is being allocated, how much money has been dispersed, how it's being used. It is your responsibility. There's a provision for public participation in county governance and also in some of these things. But you see, the people are not actually participating in public affairs. So Kenyans must start taking public participation seriously. If you do not engage in public participation, then the leaders will assume that you are not interested, and they will continue to make decisions, sometimes very bad decisions on your behalf.
Where does where is room made for things like agitation, if public participation? Because I think a lot of the things that we are told is, there was an email that was at the bottom of this. There was a meeting, there was a town hall, there was a baraza, there was this, that, the other thing. People didn't respond, or we wrote a letter, or you can go to court. So many things that you're told that you can do. Where is more succinct, more clear agitation then made room for in all of this?
I think Kenyans nowadays have resorted to agitating on social media, which has not been effective. An issue comes and it will trend for one day, and the hashtag trends, and after some time, people forget about it. And I think leaders have been used to it. So it will trend for a day or two, and then people will forget. I do not want to incite Kenyans, but what I want to say is that Kenyans must be informed. They must be able to understand that it is their responsibility to keep the leadership that they elected. They are the ones who elected this leadership. And they always say, as they say, you deserve the leaders that you elect. So once you elect a leadership, it is up to you to ensure that the leaders that you elect are actually doing the things, the manifestos that they promised you, is actually being implemented. So again, it is Kenyans. If Kenyans don't ask those questions, and especially opposition, right now I think we don't have a vibrant opposition because the opposition is basically cooperating with government. So the people who have to play opposition are the members of parliament, the legislators. They need to actually take that role. And I don't think they're doing it
What is
well
this
enough.
one thing you would do if you're MP today to change all these things we're talking about? One.
The one thing I would do,
I could ask for three, but I'm asking for one.
I would come up with a legislation that empowers the people, and that, forces the leaders to be accountable. Accountability is
Precisely
what is
that.
lacking.
Our constitution does exactly what you've just said.
Exactly. But in terms of implementation, Chapter 6 of the Constitution is very, very clear of what needs to be done. We needed, enabling legislation to be able to operationalize the Chapter 6 of the Constitution, which was not done.
Daniel, we want to thank you very much for speaking to us this morning. Daniel Juma Omondi, he's the Executive Director of the Global Peace Foundation Kenya. Daniel, you're having a series of these conversations. You can just tell us about it as we wind up the conversation in about 30 seconds.
Thank you. Tomorrow, we will be having a virtual conference, a Global Peace Leadership Conference. And I welcome those who have not registered to go and register at our website, globalpeace.or.ke. We are having this, virtual conference because of the coronavirus pandemic that has made it difficult for us to be able to meet physically. This conference is a demonstration of the resilience of the human beings, that even though there is a pandemic that we cannot meet face to face, we can still, thanks to the digital media and to the notion of the global village, we can still meet and discuss and be able to conduct business. So I'm calling it resilience amidst a pandemic.
Asante sana, Daniel, and have a good day. We wish you all the best in the conference tomorrow. We'll talk some more on leadership and especially innovative leadership. I think this is a conversation that cannot just end. It must continue.
Thank you so much.